Hello, souls and demons, and welcome back to the show. Today's story is called A Noisy Place, and it was written by Urban Playground 1, posted over to my subreddit. And with that, let's sit back, grip our seats, and enjoy the show. Jenna Davis smirked at her soap opera while sweat dripped down her face. Again, she wiped. The trailer was as hot as a tin can in the sun, but it was worse outside. At that thought, she flicked her gray eyes out the window at her daughter Megan, who was playing in the blazing sunlight. That kid just sucks up the heat, Jenna thought, but she resolved to bring her in a few minutes before she got sunstroke. A commercial came on, and Jenna took the time to use a soggy cloth to wipe her brow. Again, she wished she was rich, or had enough money to afford air conditioning. The thought of spending another hot night in sticky sheets made her frown. The blaring commercial slowly faded away, along with Megan's crooning. The slow slide to silence sent chills up Jenna's back. She looked out the window. Even the hot sun seemed to lose its bite. That wasn't the only thing that was making her nervous. Instead of seeing dusty trees and wilted weeds along a bone-dry road, Jenna saw a strange gray mist. There were colors she never saw before shimmering inside as it flowed toward Megan. Megan had her brown eyes locked on the mist as it slowly floated toward her. Jenna's eyes narrowed as she flung herself out of her clammy couch and to the door of the trailer. The mist sent tendrils toward Megan while she still stared into it. Jenna screamed and cursed at the mist as she ran towards Megan. It pulled back as if Jenna's cursing had struck a nerve. Then it extended toward Megan again. Before Megan could be touched by the mist, Jenna scooped her up and ran back to the trailer. "Mommy, there were people inside and they talked to me," Megan said while her eyes widened. Jenna didn't say anything as she held Megan close. "What did they say?" Jenna asked as she peered at the mist. It was definitely not like any fog she had seen in her life. She looked around as it crept closer. For a quick moment, Jenna thought about going into the trailer and locking all of the doors and closing the windows. An image of the fog sliding under the door, like a stealthy poison, killed that idea. No, they would have to get to the car and drive away. Already, she could feel the chill and silence from the fog creeping up on her. "They wanted me to join them." "Who?" Jenna asked, then frowned. Megan just shrugged. Jenna ran to the car. She put Megan down. "Get in the car, baby." Megan got into the passenger seat and looked behind her. Jenna could feel the chill hit her face like a winter breeze. It would have been great, but it felt wrong somehow. More like her face had been slashed with a razor. She pushed that thought aside and got into the car. "Oh, start, you bastard," she said, but the words were unheard. The car started, but Jenna couldn't hear the engine. Her only clue was the lights on the dashboard. An orange glow from the low fuel light washed across her face. Jenna sighed, but she couldn't hear that either. Megan tapped her and pointed to the rear. Jenna didn't want to see as she put the car into drive, and they left the trailer behind. Something in her mind wanted her to look back, but she managed not to fall for that temptation. Deep down, she just knew she would just sit there and watch until the mist got into the car. After that, she shook her head and stomped on the gas. The car lurched forward and flew down the road under skies as gray as a funereal shroud. Why did it look like something from winter or fall than summer? Jenna wondered. It also didn't help that all of the sounds around them, the car's tires on the road, engine noises were muted like her ears were full of water. It felt almost dreamlike. But she knew better. This was reality. No waking up from this, no matter how much she wanted to. A moment later, Jenna took a quick glance at Megan. "What do you see, Meg?" Her voice sounded far away, like she wasn't in the car. Megan was still looking back. Jenna glanced at one of the rearview mirrors. There was nothing behind them but the road and grayness. The fog or mist was only 4 or 5 car lengths behind them. She shook her head and focused on the vista in front of her. Hopefully, the fog will stay back. A thought doubted that idea, but Jenna pushed it away. She tapped Megan to force her to look away. Megan sniffled, and again, the sound seemed too low, like someone had turned the volume down. A few moments later, she turned around. Jenna smiled. Megan smiled for a quick second before her smile faded. Jenna looked back at the road and the flashing low fuel light. She wondered if they had enough to get to a gas station, or would they have to walk? Walking would probably be too dangerous. The mist would overtake them and… Again, she shook her head to clear it of disturbing thoughts. She just had to get to a gas station. If her memory was right, there should be one coming up soon. As if her thoughts had conjured it up, the sign for Nate's Gas and Sip came up on her left. Jenna sighed. Of course, she could barely hear it. The next few moments were tense as the car finally ran out of gas. Jenna was able to control the coasting car to a spot next to a red gas pump. She looked around. So far, no weird mist. Jenna got her wallet full of runaway cash out of the glove compartment. Most of her money was back at the trailer, but she kept some and a copy of her credit card in the glove box. She was poor, but that didn't mean she couldn't plan for some situations. Anxiety about the future rose up like sour bile, but she pushed it down. Once they got out of the fog and under warm blue skies, she would worry about the next steps. "Wait for me, Meg. I should be back soon. I have to pay for gas," Jenna said, then left the car. The cool air outside brought goosebumps to her arms. She crossed the lot to the bright lights of the gas station store. For a moment, she thought about a snack, but worries about how much money she had stopped that idea. It had been a while since she had used her credit card. Crossing her fingers that there was enough money, she walked up to the booth. The guy in the booth was reading a magazine, but he looked up. "Half a tank of regular, please," Jenna said. She slid her card into the gap in the dingy glass booth. Somehow, she was able to not look closely at the smashed flybits on the booth's window. "Half tank, regular," the man repeated. Then he fussed with the card and pressed some buttons. After that, he slid the card back with a receipt. She grabbed the card and receipt and left the store. It seemed like things were going their way. Maybe they could drive out of this weird area with a gunmetal gray sky and killer mists. Jenna undid the gas cap and pushed in the gas pump. Then her mind went away. Jenna came to with the feeling of someone pulling on her right arm. She looked down. Megan was screaming, but Jenna couldn't hear anything. It almost felt like she was in a silent movie. Well, except for the color and the coldish warm, or was it warmish cold gust of wind. She shook her head so she could focus. Thinking was so hard to do now for some reason. The strange mist with the unknown shimmering colors was just a few steps away. It stretched out, tendrils towards her and the gas pumps. A moment later, it touched the pump. The red faded away and the pump crumbled quietly into a grayish shimmering powder. Jenna managed to drop the gas handle. and with Megan's help got to the car and inside. Panic filled her mind as she started the car and drove off. Her quick glance showed the mist had covered half of the gas station store and was greedily stretching out for more. Jenna briefly wondered what would happen to the guy inside while she drove past the building as it slowly collapsed without making a sound. A quick look at the gas gauge made her curse under her breath. There was only enough gas to wet the bottom of the tank. She had spent enough for a half tank but barely got any. Unlike earlier, the sides of the road were covered by the mist. It stretched towards the car. Jenna felt her mind start going again. Thoughts were just being sucked out of her head, leaving her mind almost still and empty. If she stopped the car, all of her problems would just go away. Again, Megan tugged on Jenna's arm. It felt like someone else's body so far away. Megan turned on the radio and cranked up the volume. Then she started screaming. Jenna came to while the car zoomed down the road. It took her a moment to grasp what was going on. She had blacked out while driving. How? Why? The gray mist with the shimmering strange colors was all around the car. It felt like she was driving in a tunnel, but there was no light at the end, just more mist. Should she slow down? Should she speed up? For a moment, Jenna thought about what she remembered about driving in a fog. Then she pushed it away. This was no normal fog. Then again, maybe she would crash into something before she could hit the brakes. But the idea of just sitting still in the thought-stealing mist also didn't appeal to her either. Finally, Megan's screaming and the cranked-up radio got Jenna's attention. It was too loud. Jenna reached for the radio and turned it off. Megan howled in protest, but it felt like Megan's cries were at half volume. The mist leaped forward and seemed to hug the car. Again, Jenna heard the whispers, and her vision began to blur. She wondered if sound was the reason why the mist had been forced back. Her vision seemed to get blurrier, and exhaustion filled her body. Something scratched against the car. The metal shrieked in protest. Jenna reached for the radio with arms that felt like they were made of lead, but she managed to turn it back on and raise the volume to max. Her vision cleared as the loud song filled the car. Jenna looked at Megan, who had stopped screaming. "The mist doesn't like music or screaming," Megan said. Jenna nodded and focused on the road. At any moment, something could appear out of the fog, and she would have to react, if she had time to. Time seemed to crawl like a sick bug as she sped through the gray mist tunnel. Then they were out. The sky was the familiar shroud color, but at least they could see without the fog getting in the way. The volume of the radio beat at Jenna's ears. She turned it down a few ticks. The land they drove through was flat and featureless and gray. Jenna knew if she looked closer, she might see the shimmer of alien colors. But she kept her eyes forward. A worry made her seize her brow. Where was she? Did she have her phone? A quick search of her pockets found it. "Meg, can you use my phone and find out where we are?" She held out her phone. Megan took it. Moments later, "No service, Mommy." Jenna sighed. If she didn't know her location, it would be hard to find another gas station. Walking through the gray wasteland was not a good option. Then she wondered what happened. There should be trees, bushes, houses, or something. Not this flatness. We weren't in Kansas. That thought made her smile for a bit, before worry covered her face. Considering her luck, they might run into some sort of wicked witch, or at least nasty flying monkeys. For a moment, she thought about checking to see if she was wearing ruby slippers. No, They weren't in Oz either, just someplace worse. Every few moments, Jenna looked at the fuel gauge. It wouldn't take long before the low fuel light would start flashing. Then they would have to make some tough decisions. Other annoying thoughts entered her mind. With a shake of her head, she managed to push them away. With every breath, she hoped that another gas station would show up soon. But the landscape kept dashing her hopes. "Mommy, where did the funny fog come from?" Megan asked. Jenna shrugged. "I don't know, Meg." Another thing she didn't know was if they were going the right way. What if they were going deeper into an area that the fog had cleared out instead of heading out? That was something she didn't want to face. Not now. Moments passed until the flashing low fuel light lit up Jenna's tired and anxious face again. She kept her left hand on the wheel while covering her face for a hot second with her right. What were they going to do now? The car slowly coasted down the road. It wouldn't take too long before it would stop, and maybe their lives with it. Jenna shook her head. "No, I will not go gently into that strange mist-filled night," she thought. After a moment, the car stopped. She sighed and looked at Megan. Megan frowned. Jenna sighed. This time she could hear most of it. She got out of the car and looked around. Nothing met her gaze but miles and miles of flat, gray wasteland and the road. She walked to the right side of the car and looked at it. The side looks like it was corroded, except it wasn't the reddish brown of rust. It was like the mist with a shimmer of alien colors. Something grabbed Jenna's arm. She jumped and looked around. Megan shook Jenna's arm. Jenna finally looked at Megan. "Sorry, we gotta go. Can't stay here." Megan looked back at the car, then back at Jenna. For a moment, Jenna thought about bringing a gas can, but she decided not to. Did she want to walk back here? Jenna squashed that idea. Another one slunk into her head. She went back to the car and turned up the volume. The song dissolved into static. Jenna checked 4 other stations, but they were all off the air. A chill flew down her back as she realized that maybe wherever the radio stations were, the mist might have taken them down. With some hope in her heart, she turned up the volume even though it was just static. After a quick opening of the glove compartment to get some important papers and money, she left the car. She looked around again and started walking. Megan followed while looking around. The noise from the car faded too fast as they walked down the road. Jenna looked around. She was quite sure something would come for her. "Meg, let's walk a bit faster." Dread weighed down on Jenna, like that winter coat she had to wear while visiting relatives in Canada. Except that there was little fun. Heck, there was not that much to look at as they rushed down the road. It was dangerous to be out on the road, but she didn't want to be too close to the sides. What if the gray mist was to form out of the flat, dead wastelands? Jenna knew at least in the middle of the road, it would take the mist time to get them. So far, there was no traffic. The road moved up a hill and Jenna urged Megan to walk faster. "Come on, Meg, we gotta move faster." Every moment threatened to bring the mists back. She just knew that eventually they would show up. They rushed up the hill and made their way down. Jenna looked back. She didn't know why. The car was blocked, and they had stopped hearing the noise it made. That made a chill race down Jenna's back. She walked faster. Jenna's eyes flicked left and right. She just knew that every second that passed would make the mist appear. It was a terrible thought to think, but she was beyond thinking they had gotten away. They jogged down the road. Megan whined, "Mommy!" "Megan, we have to move faster." Megan just stopped and she pulled at Jenna's arm. Jenna for a moment wanted to tug back, but she thought about what Megan was feeling. "How about we rest a bit?" Megan nodded while still gasping. She let go of Jenna's hand. Jenna looked up from Megan, and the moment she dreaded occurred, much like the low fuel light did. Small wisps of gray fog flowed up from the ground. She gasped and grasped at Megan's hand. Megan ripped her hand away. She was still catching her breath. Jenna glanced quickly at the other side of the road. The mist was congealing there, too. "Meg, we gotta go now," Jenna said, then reached for Megan's hand. For a moment, she stood still as a statue. What was the point of running? She was just going to die tired. No. She shook her head again. Megan stepped forward and stretched out her hand. Jenna grabbed it and ran down the road, pulling her with her. As Jenna ran, she saw the mist form into a solid wall that blocked the view of the wasteland behind it. In a few moments, the fog would expand into the road. Again, Jenna wondered about the use of running. And again, she pushed that thought away. No, she would keep going. As she expected, the fog billowed into the road. It wouldn't take too long before it was within touching distance. There was nothing to protect her. Again, she pushed those thoughts away as they ran down the road. Jenna wondered how long she could run. Her sides hurt and her breath rasped in her lungs. Megan was also gasping for air. Then Jenna's mind went away. Somehow she came back to herself as Megan tugged on her arm again. It all seemed helpless to her. The mist was creeping up on them and she was somewhere else. And then they passed through something. It felt like a cold blade sliding across their skins. Noise assaulted their ears. Darkness covered Jenna's eyes as she passed out. When she woke up, she felt her body being bounced and jounced while noise pounded at her ears. She wondered what was going on. "Mommy!" She opened her eyes. Megan had a faint smile on her face. "Megan!" Jenna exclaimed as Megan rushed into her arms. After a too brief hug, Jenna looked around. They were on some sort of dinghy bus with tired people that tried to hide that they were watching her and Megan. "What's going on? Where are we?" she said.
"Well, darling, you're on a bus heading to, what do they call it?"
a tired old woman said. "The evac zone. We're gonna leave this messed up area," somebody replied. Jenna glanced out the windows. Instead of wastelands or gray fog, there was the familiar sight of trees and an occasional house. "I wish they turned the noise down. I can barely think." The old woman sighed.
"Can't do that. The fog or whatever it is could come back. I'm Beatrice, by the way. I bet you were in the fog zone. You're pretty lucky to survive along with your little one."
Jenna nodded. She wanted to know more. Before she could ask another question, Beatrice continued.
"The quiet fog came to my little farm. My poor little chickens were in their coop because of the heat. They say chickens are dumb animals, but even they know to stay in the shade and try to keep cool. Anyway, I heard a ruckus out back, and I went outside to see. A strange gray fog rolled across the field towards me. The chickens made quite a racket, and I could see the fog hang back for a few moments. I could have done something, but I was still wondering where the fog came from. You don't get that during a heat wave. Also, there was nothing on the news. After a few more moments, my poor chickens got tired, and the fog rolled over the coop. There was a strange flicker and it was gone. All that was left was some gray dust and ash. Then I saw the colors. Colors I've never seen in all of my 60-something years on this pitiable ball of woe. Sorry about that. And then something got in my head, telling me to just lay down and rest. No, Beatrice Louis ain't no quitter. Gonna take more than some strange fog to put me in the mud. So I ran up the block screaming my fool head off. After running for too long, I ran into someone with a car and some sense. Oh, before I forget, the fog likes silence. Noise pushes it back. There's more, but I'm exhausted and forgot the rest.
Jenna nodded. Thank you. Then she remembered her manners. My name is Jenna Davis. This is Megan. Megan just looked at Beatrice. Another voice came from the folks on the bus. You're lucky that one of the deputies found you at the edge of the fog and carried you past the speakers. Thank goodness for Jeb, who likes to tinker. When the power went out and the fog started moving in, he figured out that noise kept it back. Jeb managed to hook up some solar panels to some speakers. We would have stayed in town longer, but the fog just moved to another part. We were doomed here anyway. Had to leave before the fog cut us off. Why is this happening? Where's Jeb? Another voice asked. I don't know, the other voice replied. The two voices bantered on, but Jenna had lost interest. There was so much to think about and questions to ask. No one had said where the fog came from or what it wanted. After a few moments, she shrugged and held Megan tightly as the bus lurched down the bumpy road. The sheltering arms of the noise pouring out of the bus's speakers covered them all.